Hey guys, last year I made a video comparing 3 of the hybrid thermoformed paddles on the market at the time, the Vatic Pro Flash, the 6.0 Double Black Diamond, and the Ronbus R1 Pulsar with the 5.25-inch handle. Now since then, there have been a lot more hybrid thermoformed paddles that have hit the market, so I wanted to make an updated video comparing my experiences with the paddles that I have hit with. Now the paddles I classify as eligible for this video are Gen 2 thermoformed paddles that have a curved top and a length less than 16.5 inches but above 16 inches. Now there are paddles that claim to be 16.5 inches on their websites, but when you take a ruler from the top of the paddle face to the base of the handle, they actually fit the dimensions of a hybrid paddle and thus have been added to the list. As for the width, this can vary, but they're usually around 7.5 inches on these paddles, though some do have tapers in the top corners that flare out slightly. One last thing is that some of these paddles may have thinner variants, but we'll only be looking at the 16mm versions of all of them. The 12 paddles we will be looking at today are the 6.0 Black Diamond, the 6.0 Double Black Diamond, the 6.0 Ruby, the Volair Mach 1 Forza, the Ronbus R1 Pulsar with the 5.25-inch handle, the Vatic Pro Flash, the Pickleball Apes Pro Line Energy S, the Honolulu Pickleball Company's Sword and Shield J2, the Bread and Butter Loco, the Neonic Flow, the Mark Pickleball Kinetic, and finally the Aiso. Now in this comparison between these paddles, I'm really only going to look at two categories, power and pop. Power is how much force the paddle can apply onto the ball with a full swing, so shots like serves and drives. Pop is how much force can be applied onto the ball with little to no movement from the paddle, so shots like blocks and punch volleys. In my opinion, these are the two categories where the differences are more distinct between these paddles. Because they are all hybrid shaped with similar surfaces, things like spin and sweet spot are similar between them, where I think all those differences are a bit negligible when hitting them side by side. However, I will add in my swing weight and twist weight measurements for each one, and there are some paddles that do have some distinct features about them that I will call out. Starting off, let's get the 6.0 Black Diamond Power out of the way, as it's the only paddle that has a raw composite surface, making it more powerful and poppy than the other carbon fiber and Kevlar paddles on this list. So for number 1 in both categories of power and pop, this easily goes to the 6.0 Black Diamond. Moving on, let's go down the list for power. And at number 2, we have the dynamic Kevlar blended Mark Pickleball Kinetic, which I actually just reviewed recently on this channel. At number 3, I put the other Kevlar blended paddle here, the Pickleball Apes Pro Line Energy S. Now this is a bit softer feeling than the Kinetic, but it is slightly longer than other paddles on this list at 16.4 inches, so it does have a bit of a higher swing weight than other paddles, which contributes to its higher power. For number 4, we have the last Kevlar paddle on this list, the 6.0 Ruby. Unlike the other two Kevlar paddles, this one isn't a blend, but the face is full Kevlar, and I think the power is just under the other two. At number 5, we have the Aiso. This is also a bit longer in length, similar to the dimensions of the Pro Line Energy S, so it actually has the highest swing weight in this list, but the feel is a bit softer, which is why it lands at number 5. At number 6, we have the Volair Mach 1 Forza, followed very closely by the 6.0 Double Black Diamond at number 7, which rounds out the middle of the list. At number 8, we have a tie between the Bread and Butter Loco and the Honolulu Pickleball Company's Sword and Shield J2. Both of these use that same mold as the 6.0 paddles, but I think they have a softer feel to them. Coming in at number 9 is the Vatic Pro Flash, number 10 is the Ronbus R1 Pulsar, and finally for our last spot, we have the Neonic Flow. Now here are the rankings on the screen, so if you did want to take a look at everything in depth, feel free to pause the video here. Now let's move on to the list for face stiffness and pop. With the 6.0 Black Diamond in the number 1 spot, the second stiffest feeling paddle on this list is the Vatic Pro Flash, which is a big change from its ranking in the power category. Meanwhile, the Mark Pickleball Kinetic retains its high placement in this list as well and comes in at number 3. For number 4 and 5, we have the Volair Mach 1 Forza, followed again by the 6.0 Double Black Diamond. The 6-0 Ruby moves down now to number 6 for face stiffness and is followed by the Bread and Butter Loco at number 7, which is followed very closely by the Honolulu Pickleball Company's Sword and Shield J2 at number 8. The Ronbus R1 Pulsar is again low on this list at number 9, while number 10 is the Proline Energy S, which is a big difference from where it sat in the power list. Similarly, at number 11 is the Isocentric, which also made a significant drop. Finally, at number 12 once again is the softest hybrid paddle, the Neonic Flow. Now, here's the list again on the screen so people can see where I put these paddle rankings. Like I mentioned earlier, things like spin, sweet spot, and swing weight aren't really worth going into too much detail. While spin tests may yield different results across the paddles, I personally think that you can't really tell a difference between the spin all that much if you play these paddles side by side and don't actively run spin tests on them. I think they all provide high amounts of spin and you won't find any of them lacking. The swing weights are all roughly similar, but we do have some outliers like the Proline Energy S and the Centric, which are a bit higher from their longer lengths. The twist weights do have some variances since the paddles that do have the wider tapers do tend to have higher twist weight measurements, but considering that many of the molds of these paddles are similar, I didn't feel the need to do a ranking for them. Also, twist weight doesn't necessarily correlate with the sweet spot. It measures more of the horizontal sweet spot and stability, but it doesn't give metrics for the longer sweet spot on the vertical axis for the paddles with longer lengths. But regarding the power and pop rankings, let's take a look at some interesting observations. To start, we have the Black Diamond Power as the most powerful paddle in both categories, while the Neonic Flow is the opposite, sitting as the softest paddle in both. The Flow is basically that paddle you would go for if you're looking for just a tad bit more juice in your shots from a Gen 1 paddle, while the Black Diamond is that paddle to get if you just want the most power. The 6-0 Double Black Diamond sits comfortably in the middle, and I think out of all the hybrid paddles on this list, it's the most all-around well-balanced one. So knowing that, if you did want to increase or decrease pop, power, or both, you can use this list to help figure out which paddle to go to. For example, if you want more pop and power, the Kinetic and Forza could be good options, but if you want something a bit softer, the J2 or Loco might suit you. There are also paddles that have more power but less pop too, like the Proline Energy S and Centric if you do want a softer feel but retain good power on drives. Now these are all just my opinions from my experiences hitting these paddles, and they may differ from what other reviewers or players may have experienced themselves. There are manufacturing variances that will exist in these paddles which may affect people's views during the testing because static weights, swing weights, and twist weights will differ across the same paddle from the factories. But this comparison list is my own ranking of these paddles, so treat this more like a guideline rather than a definitive list. While it may not be 100% accurate, I do think it can be used as a helpful guide for people when buying paddles. But anyways, I hope this video has been helpful, and let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with this list. If you are interested in picking up any of these paddles, I've linked discount codes and links in the video description below.